Yeah. So are my slides visible?
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, Dr. Chitra, for the opportunity, and I'll be countering Dr. Swati, and I'll be speaking for surgical excision of the lesion followed by some form of immunotherapy. I have no financial interest to disclose. So before I go into my presentation in greater detail, I'll give the background of my practice area. So the headquarters of my hospital chain is at Barakpur, which is a small town in just outside the city limits of Kolkata. So it's basically a municipal corporation in urban area with a population of 1.5 lakhs. It's highly densely populated, as you can see, and 10% of the population or the patients coming to my setup are living below the poverty line. Also, there are sizable number of patients who come from the remote districts, the hinterland of West Bengal, so to say, and also a significant number again referred cases from Bihar and Jharkhand as well. So I'll give a disclaimer right at the outset that as a institution or a policy, we have moved away from interferon in the treatment, in the medical management of OSSN, and I'll reveal in the coming slides why. So we have a lot of management dilemmas in the primary management of OSSN. I do consider that in the past 15 years or so, there is a greater shift to topical chemotherapy. Either there is interferon, there is 5-FU or mitomycin C as the primary treatment of OSSN rather than surgery. Also, they have a greater role as an adjuvant therapy if you have performed a surgical excision of the same. However, if you look into the literature, the reported recurrence rates in the management of such lesions is if you just do a surgery, it varies as wide as 0 to 56%. If you do a surgery and then administer a topical interferon, the recurrence can vary from 0 to 28%. If you do the same thing but give topical 5-FU instead, the recurrence is lower, it varies from 10 to 15%. And if you do the surgery and give mitomycin C, again a wide range of 0 to 30% recurrence after surgery. So what do we do? So do we go ahead and just clinically diagnose the lesion and start primary immunotherapy or chemotherapy, or do you need to do some form of biopsy? So basically, in all the literature, what has been discovered is that full thickness biopsy of an OSSN is the gold standard to grade it. And as we all know, in the management of any malignancy or a suspected malignant lesion, grading is the first step towards proper management. We have definitely lots of non-invasive methods of diagnosis, but they are not foolproof. We are all good clinicians at the slit lamp, but if you just rely on your clinical acumen alone, you will just have a 40% accuracy in differentiating a pre-malignant lesion versus an invasive lesion, just 40%. You can do impression cytology, which is not as invasive as an excisional biopsy, but even there are a few differentiating features. It is not very good in identifying invasive disease whose management is radically different from a pre-malignant or a non-invasive disease. Definitely, we have advanced modalities like confocal microscopy and anterior segment OCT, but their use is still evolving, and we are not very sure that how do we catch the invasive disease quite well. Also, the non-epithelial conjunctival lesions which masquerade as OSSN, you will end up misdiagnosing them in around 10.5% of the cases, and not all of those misdiagnosis cases are exactly benign to begin with. So again, there is a huge pitfall here that you will end up treating a more serious disease as a benign one and land into more trouble. So Dr. Swati has a wide range of publications. I will be quoting them extensively. So a lot of literature has been published on interferon as the sole and whole therapy of either immunotherapy or immunoreduction in the management of giant OSSN or any other form of OSSN. But here you can see in all these different publications that even there is a reasonable amount of success with just using interferon. The duration of therapy, the median is almost 3 months in almost all the articles which I have reviewed, and it can go up to 6 months or even in some cases 12 months even. So that's definitely a huge period or duration of therapy and the cost. And also the patient is in constant anxiety regarding how the lesion is going to respond in the end, if at all. and the constant economic burden of visiting the hospital every month or so. So definitely a lot of publications and a lot of success, but the duration of therapy is huge. And what are the factors if you see in the success of interferon therapy? Is that basically the clock or involvement of ocular surface by OSSN determines the response. So basically, if the tumor is less than 6 clock hours of the ocular surface, so in 82% of the cases, you will hit the target and the patient will have a response, obviously, of a longer duration of therapy. And if it is greater than 6 hours, so it is definitely a immunoreducing agent. But the success rate has gone down drastically from 82% to 26%, in which you have to resort to some form of surgery. And yes, as this has been shown by Dr. Swati herself, this is study which was published in IGO in 2016. So it is a cost-effective therapy, but the cost effectiveness is comparable to the Western countries, in which the burden of therapy is huge, and usually it is not covered by insurance in the United States. The subconjunctival injections are a more definitive intervention and are covered by Medicare. But in India, as we know, most of the population is not insured, and neither the drops nor the injection is basically it goes out of the patient's pocket. So now the MRP has not changed much. It is around 850 rupees per ml of 3 million units of interferon, and the cost at the time of publication was 9,200 rupees approximately per patient. But herein I found a fallacy is that this study, which was published in the American Journal of Health and Systemic Pharmacology way back in 2007, so they basically tested the stability of an extemporaneously prepared recombinant interferon eye drop formulation. So they used the volume of 3 MIU and they diluted it with 5 ml of a 0.01 solution of BAK, which we all know is an excellent preservative, although it has some surface toxicity, but it inhibits the growth of microorganisms. The conventional way of preparing it in our clinic is we don't use any back formulation. We use 4 ml of distilled water. So they did it at 2 temperatures. This is at around the recommended temperature for interferon is around 2 to 8 degrees centigrade, for which a refrigerator is mandatory. So they evaluated it at 5 to plus minus 3 degrees and at room temperature. The room temperature abroad is again quite different from our scenario. And the conclusion was that at around refrigerated temperature, it was stable for 15 days only. And at room temperature, that is around 28 plus minus 2 degrees, it was stable for only 7 days. So this begets the following questions on the right. So what happens after 15 days, even after refrigeration? Is the solution actually usable? We are dispensing 5 ml solution to the patient and asking them to keep it in a refrigerator or an ice box. So at the rate of around 4 drops per day, which is the recommended dose, 5 ml will last for 25 days. But the wastage in the cost calculation is not factored if you follow this study and change the drops every 15 days. So what does the patient do with the rest of the drops? The usual mentality of our patients is that let us not waste anything. We have spent a lot of money behind this. We'll use these drops till it gets over. But this is going beyond the 15 days, beyond which this solution becomes unstable. Then also the cost of refrigeration is not factored in. Most of the patients, at least in our profile in West Bengal, do not have a refrigerator at home. They resort to the refrigerator at the grocer shop or their neighbors, which is not reliable considering the power cuts as well. What happens if the patient ignores our instructions and keep the drops at room temperature? So is there any microbial contamination or risk of superinfection on a compromised ocular surface? And as I said before, the temperature ranges across the country exceed 30 degrees Celsius many times a year. So a literature-based decision analysis, which was published in the Cornea Journal way back in 2016, in which they compared different modalities. That is, you excise and then you excise again if the margins are positive. You excise and you give interferon alpha 2B for positive margins. Then you incise, just do an incisional biopsy followed by interferon, and empiric treatment with just interferon. So what was the conclusion was that in all the studies in the literature published between 1983 and 2015, Surgical excision followed by interferon was the, for positive margins, was the favored strategy for minimizing persistence or recurrence of the disease. And another interesting study by Carol Karp's group published in 2019 was what was the quality of life of these patients who either underwent a surgical therapy or just purely medical management. So they had 41 patients and it was a recall survey. So basically, they had used their previously published literature cohort, and basically this concluded that the quality of life in the patients undergoing surgery as well as receiving purely medical management was the same, but the patients were driven to choose chemotherapy because they either feared surgery or the counseling was inadequate, or the patients read up few of the published articles on their own and chose to undergo chemotherapy rather than surgery. But if you see at the objectively at the quality of life, it was not different in the two groups. So these slides are the courtesy of my colleague in oculoplasty, Dr. Joyita. So basically, this gentleman was presenting with a black spot which was growing in size since the past 1.5 years. So he underwent conjunctival mass excision biopsy with amniotic membrane and a double cryo to the excised margins. The histopathologically reported a CIN grade 3 with dense pigmentation. Post-op, he was put on topical interferon drops 4 times a day for 3 months. So on the bottom right, you can see this picture with a beautifully done surgery at 6 months. There is no evidence of any limbal stem cell failure, nor there is any recurrence visible. Similarly, this diffuse gelatinous mass in the upper fornix, upper bulbar conjunctiva, noted since the past 6 months. The patient underwent excisional biopsy with a double cryo and a AMT. The histopath revealed a CIN with a marked dysplasia. And since there was, the superior margin was close to the tumor edge, he received post-op perilesional injection of 5 million units once a month for 3 months, along with topical therapy, which went on for 4 months. So there is a slight symblepharon formation in the post-op period. This is a 6-month photo, but otherwise the surgery is pristine, the surface is good. Again, this mass was noted since 1 year and surgical excision was done. CIN grade 3 and topical therapy after the surgery for 3 months. And you can see at the end of 6 months, a beautiful ocular surface with no evidence of any recurrence. So in conclusion, I would like to say that excisional biopsy followed by a form of chemotherapy, not necessarily interferon, is preferable because first it establishes your diagnosis on a very firm footing. So you can speak with the patient very freely and tell them what the situation actually is. It also, the medico-legal angle gets properly covered because you have more documentation. You can match the treatment appropriately to the disease aggressiveness as seen in the histopath report. You have better patient compliance because they understand your instructions and the counseling better. Their anxiety becomes less because as soon as you utter the word malignancy or eye cancer, they go into a shocked shell, so to say, and the relatives and the patient become anxious. So the prognosis and the counseling becomes very easy. And at least for our Indian patient profiles or the profiles we deal with at our institute, I feel this is the better choice and with better compliance and success rates. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saim Basu.
Thank you so much, Aditya and Swati. So Swati, I think what Aditya is basically saying, I think is from a logistical and affordability perspective. So those are the two main issues I guess he's raising in addition to other smaller issues, but mainly from the point of view of logistics and affordability, keeping in mind the context of India being a developing country and most patients, I guess, across the country who have these kind of problems coming from a low socioeconomic background. So what are your responses to those points?
Yeah, Aditya, I agree with your points, but I think I smartly inserted the treatment with 5FU as well, because I see that these points are going to come up. I think 5FU is very, very affordable because each 10 ml vial costs only 50 rupees and that can be used for 50 patients.
Yes.
10 patients. No, I think it's 50 ml is 50 rupees, I think. Yeah, so which can be used for 50 patients almost, and it does not require refrigeration.
Refrigeration, yes.
And it can be kept at room temperature, and it shows very quick results as well.
Yes.
So I think, we have to clearly choose which are the patients where interferon can be given and which are the patients where 5FU can be given if we have to go for medical treatment. But having said that, I will not deny that surgical treatment is not required at all for OSSN. But what I have seen in my practice over the years, it's that almost 95% of the cases do not reach OR. Most of them can be treated with medical treatment itself. Only about 5% of the patients require surgery.
So Aditya, let me ask you this. Is this all or none for you? Are you going for the surgical treatment for all cases, or are you trying, let's say, other alternatives to interferon like Swati mentioned, 5FU or MMC in some cases?
No, we are not going for surgery as the first choice, or surgery in all cases presenting to the OPD. We are definitely going for a trial of 5-fluorouracil, and it's definitely giving us impressive results. But the caveat is that the counseling part is extremely important, that they may end up needing some form of surgery if we do not see an adequate or expected response after the proper cycles of chemotherapy are over. So the patient is sort of mentally prepared at the outset that if he falls into that rare 5 or 10% group in which the lesion is too extensive or it's not responding, yeah, they may end up needing surgery, but not as a first choice, or not for all patients. No, we do give trial of chemotherapy first.
If there is extensive limbal involvement in your excision, would you
Yes.
think of doing SLET or limbal autograft at the same sitting?
Ma'am, I have no personal experience with the same, but yes, there has been published literature that you combine a mini SLET or some form of SLET along with the limbal excision so as to prevent limbal stem cell failure. I think Dr. Shreyas is also presenting a case on the same. So yeah, that is one option definitely.
I feel that's an overkill doing it simultaneously. I mean, one can always wait to see if there is a limbal stem cell deficiency and then do a SLET. Because SLET is not a prophylactic procedure in my mind. It is not for prophylaxis of limbal stem cell deficiency. It is for cure of limbal stem cell deficiency.
Can I make a comment, Chitra, about this particular?
Yes.
I think the reason that we want to combine SLET with the OSSN excision, especially if it's more than 2 to 3 clock hours in size, because the limbal stem cell deficiency post OSSN treatment is far more recalcitrant. So therefore, prevention would work better, because cases which I have done with Santosh, who he has earlier when we are doing CLAT, the outcome of those CLAT post SSN not very good. While the experience which Swati has published, I think doing the OSSN simultaneously to me is a much better option.
Yeah, I agree. The reason that we studied that also was because we were seeing these cases where the SLET was not being very helpful when we do it as a secondary procedure. But when we started doing it as primary, as a prophylactic procedure, we definitely saw very few cases of LSCD. Whether all these patients would have developed or not is something that.
How do you know that these patients, would have developed or would not have?
That is
you're presuming that they may develop limbal stem cell. Thousands and thousands of OSSN, even when SLET was not there, we've just excised them and done nothing about it. And I mean, they all did not go into limbal stem cell deficiency.
Correct. Completely agree with that. But I think it has to be reserved for cases where there is going to be extensive limbal stem cell loss. It should not be done in every case. Like if there is going to be loss of only 3 or 4 clock hours, we don't need it. But if we know that the loss is going to be about say 9 clock hours or 10 clock hours, then I think definitely it is required. So the selection of cases becomes very important.
All right.
Anything else?
Thank you so much, everyone. I think we found some common ground here. Again, want to thank Swati and Aditya both. I think what came through was we try medical chemotherapy first, if interferon, if the patient can afford and preserve, or 5FU and MMC being other options. Aditya also made the very important point of the importance of how critical patient counseling is in explaining everything. And then if nothing works, then we have surgical management and the role of SLED vis-a-vis conjunctival autograft AMT in the prevention of LSCD. I think we'll have more on that when Shreyas presents his case. Thank you so much.